Good evening, and welcome back to the Resistance Report. It is now January 25th, 2017. After the elation and exuberance of Saturday's marches, reality has now set in. We are now seeing the Trump administration for what it is. And it is as bad, if not worse, as we predicted it might be. You know, I remember just a few weeks ago, people saying to me, people who I respect, politicians, pundits in Washington, they said, well, it's not going to be nearly that bad because, you see, once people become president, once they are cloaked with that authority, that responsibility, once they walk into that Oval Office, they change, their personalities change. Things that they might have expected or intended become different. Not with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is exactly the same. I do think in many respects he is worse, and the people around him are equally, if not even worse. We are now deep into the world of alternate facts, as Kellyanne Conway said, trying to defend Sean Spicer's assertion that there were more people attending that inauguration than ever before in the history of the world, the planet. I just came across something interesting along those lines. George Orwell wrote a book in 1949. It was called 1984. And that book was a dystopian look, a dystopian novel about a future civilization in which facts were turned into fictions, and fictions were turned into facts, and truth was turned upside down, and indeed all critical thinking was eliminated by a totalitarian regime. That book, that 1949 book, George Orwell, called 1984, has just topped the Amazon bestseller list. And according to the publisher, it began to soar over the weekend. In fact, the big increase in sales, an extraordinary increase, unprecedented increase in sales, happened Sunday when Kellyanne Conway was trying to defend Sean Spicer, and she used that term, alternate facts. This morning, Donald Trump announced that he was going to do an investigation, speaking of alternate facts, an investigation of how it could possibly be that 3 to 5 million people voted who did not have a right to vote. That degree of voter fraud, he said, should not be accepted, and he was going to mount a major investigation. Well, again, let me remind you, there is no such voter fraud. There is no evidence. There is no study. There is nothing. This is a figment of Donald Trump's imagination intended to accomplish two things: confuse everybody, obviously, about who actually won the popular vote. It was not Donald Trump. When he says 3 to 5 million fraudulent votes, he wants to suggest very strongly, if not convince people, that Hillary Clinton did not win the popular vote by 3 million votes. And he also wants to set up state legislatures, particularly Republican state legislatures, to begin the process of restricting and suppressing votes in the 2018 and 2020 elections, making it harder for people to vote. Voter IDs, other hurdles. We are back in George Orwell land, folks. There are also, in a very Orwellian way, gag orders right now imposed on several government departments, including the Environmental Protection Agency. A particular gag order came to light today having to do with scientists, climate change scientists in the Environmental Protection Agency. Part of George Orwell's 1984 was not only the suppression of truth and the suppression of facts, but the elevation of made-up truth and the made-up facts. Also, today, Donald Trump began in earnest his giant wall along the Mexican border, also based upon fraud and lies on Donald Trump's part, saying that undocumented immigrants have increased dramatically in numbers in the United States. Wrong. Actually, they are dropping in numbers. They've been dropping in numbers for years. He also contended, remember, during the campaign, that they were responsible for a disproportionate number of rapes and murders. The facts are just the opposite. Undocumented workers, according to FBI statistics, are actually responsible for a very low, disproportionately low, lower than their proportion in America of rapes and murders. And so we're embarking upon this wall by executive order today. It's going to cost in the range of $25 to $35 billion, not million, billion dollars. Think of all the schools we could be improving, creating, the teachers, the great education, the health care we could be providing. $35 billion, a wall that is not needed, is just Trump's trumped up charge based upon hate. The XL and Dakota access pipelines we talked about yesterday, Trump has given the green light. He also, by executive order, is halting refugees from Syria, the flow of refugees from Syria. They desperately need homes. They're going to Canada, they're going to Germany, they're going to Europe. Why the United States now is turning its back on those refugees from Syria? Why? Because they are, many of them, Muslim. In fact, he also, by executive order, halted the refugees from any other Muslim-majority nation. The United States has never had a religious test before with regard to entry into the United States. The Constitution of the United States prohibits us from making religion a test of citizenship or presumably anything else. And yet, in the Orwellian version of Donald Trump's America, this is perfectly permissible. This is part of what Donald Trump's America has become. And he wants to punish sanctuary cities, most of them on the West Coast, some on the East Coast, Chicago. Punish them for not cooperating with federal authorities with regard to deporting undocumented workers. How is he going to do that exactly? Donald Trump thrives on controversy and conflict based upon lies and xenophobia. That is his formula, folks. And so many of you ask, what can you do? What can you do as a practical matter? What can you do this weekend? If you aren't out marching, and we already did that last weekend, we could do that again, we could do that some more, but what can you do as a practical matter in the face of this, I'm going to use the word advisedly, tyranny? Well, here's one thing you can do. You can get together with friends and neighbors and others in your community. You can do it this weekend or next weekend. You can call a meeting. Call it a resistance group. And when you call the meeting, parcel out 4 tasks to members of your resistance group. Task number 1, find the truth. Find out where and what Donald Trump is lying about, get the truth, and figure out ways to getting the truth out to others. Number 2, contact your members of Congress, not only as individuals, but as a group. It's much more impactful as a group of people who all have the same members of Congress, and you will, by definition, if it's your friends close by and your neighbors. Contact your member of Congress. Say no to this hatefulness, no to these executive orders, and also no to the Trump agenda. Number 3, try to form a sister district. Now, there's a very good web page called sisterdistrict.com. And by sister district, I mean this. You, in your community, in your congressional district, if you are a blue district, if you like your members of Congress, why not find, and you could through this webpage, find a sister district that is not quite as blue. Maybe it's purple. Maybe it could be blue in 2018 or 2020. And connect with that sister district. Connect with others and other progressives in that sister district. Others who feel as outraged as you do, even if they might even be Republicans and they are outraged about what is happening. Republicans do worry about tyranny. And work with that sister district to make it blue in terms of resisting Donald Trump. And if you're in a purple district, connect up with a blue district. We know about sister cities and sister universities and sister countries, sister districts, political action. And that's number 4. Looking ahead to 2018 and 2020 with your group, with your friends, begin to organize and mobilize for elections that will soon be upon us. Now, I don't mean to suggest this is the only way to go, or this is a must, or this is necessary. No, there are all sorts of ways that you can exercise political action. I'm not even asking that you devote yourself 100% of your time, or 50%, or 20%, 10%, maybe maximum one day a week, or one day every 2 weeks, or maybe a day a month, but you've got to. The stakes are high enough now. Now that we see the Orwellian future and present that Donald Trump is bringing to America. It is, if you don't mind me saying so, your obligation and duty as a citizen of this great nation to stand up and stop it in every small way you can. Because when hundreds of thousands of us, as we did last weekend, when we stand up together, we can make a huge difference. Last weekend, those marches, it felt great. Well, now we are slogging this week through the reality. You might also buy 1984, George Orwell's book. It's in paperback. That's the first thing your resistance group may be, the first book it wants to read and then talk about. That is the Resistance Report for tonight, January 25th, 2017, and I will see you tomorrow.